So I'm going to get it started. I don't have my gavel, but the meeting will come to order. The time is now 5:30 on Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. This is a regular meeting of the District of Columbia Commission on the Arts and Humanities. My name is Reggie Van Lee, chairperson of the commission. I am wearing a gray suit and a black turtleneck. I will now call the roll. When you hear your name, please answer present. Stacy. Cora.
Present.
Maggie.
Present.
Juanice. Natalie.
Present.
Kymber.
Present.
Now Natalie present, thank you. Kymber present, great. Mariah.
Present.
Carla. Hector. Gretchen.
Present.
And myself. A quorum is present. This is a meeting of a public body held in open session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Notice of the meeting was posted on the Commission's website, dcarts.dc.gov, and on the DC Office of Open Government Central Meeting calendar. The meeting is being conducted both at Commission's offices on Webex and is being live streamed to the Commission's YouTube channel. An electronic recording of the meeting will be available for viewing online following the conclusion of the meeting. I will now read the land acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived in this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We stand on the ancestral lands of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway Peoples. We pay respect to the elders past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events and to use such truths to guide the legacy of the Arts Commission. The first item of business is the consent calendar. Is there any objection to the items listed on the consent calendar? Hearing no objection, the items are adopted and approved as noted. As you know, normally we have an artist to present to us at all of our meetings, and unfortunately the artist that we had from the east of the river, Foreign Language for Kids, reached us recently and said they could not join us, so we'll try to reschedule them. And so we'll have to let the jazz band from last month cover both last month and this month. That was entertainment enough to perhaps cover two meetings. But we will continue to have artists here to continue to remind us why we're here doing the work that we do. We do have one speaker scheduled to give public comments, Leonina Arismendi from the Poor People's Campaign. Are you present?
I don't see that person, Reggie. I had asked
if they do appear, if someone sees them appear, let me know and we'll still let them make their public comments.
Okay.
So I will now make my chairman's report. And I want to say that clearly we had an amazing meeting last month. As I understand it, it was historic to have 4 council members and to have 2 council member candidates attendance. It's something that we haven't seen before. And I have followed meetings with 2 council members, and we also had, I did say we had 2 candidates here as well, but I have meetings set up with 2 of the council members, one who was there and one who was not. We also have the Deputy Mayor, John Sicchio, there, who presented, and we've launched a robust partnership with him, both sharing our grant information and pursuing some new initiatives, moving ahead with some new initiatives. The Mayor spoke and reaffirmed her commitment to this commission and the work we do and our collective agenda around the creative economy and the critical importance that we play in driving that. And we approved a number of major grants and funding, ending with a very nice celebration party that was a thank you for the staff as well as the commissioners. So we had a really good session, and I thank everyone for attending. We had phenomenal attendance as well. I think only 1 or 2 of our staff were missing and only 1 or 2 of our commissioners as well. So I wanted to thank everyone for that pause there. I will go to the director's report now. The interim executive director, David.
Thanks, Reggie. I will be brief. So yes, as Reggie mentioned, at the end of September, the commissioners voted to approve just under 800 grant awards. Those awards moved pretty quickly. And so on October 3rd, we announced those awards to the community of arts and humanities organizations and artists and humanities practitioners. And now the grant managers on both sides, both the grants department and public art, are neck deep in moving paperwork. Grantees have an October 17th deadline, which was yesterday, to get paperwork back to us. Something that we've always done on the sort of the front end of grants is we've always had a series of preparation workshops to help applicants prepare for the opportunity, including live chats. In the last couple of years, we've started adding sort of more of the back end support. So in September, we had a grants report workshop for current FY22 grantees, and then that was followed up by an additional informational or live chat session this past Friday. We also last week had a Meet Your Grant Manager meeting. We had over 100 grantees attend that to really, put a face to a name, but also to help them navigate some of the processes that they have to navigate in order to receive a check. I listed in the report, there's probably 6 or 7 government agencies with whom we work, with whom our grantees have to interface. And so it's really important that we provide as much support to them in this process as possible. They've gotten through the first step, getting the award, and then there's it's almost like a relay race. There's a lot of other steps to it. So thanks to all the grant managers for digging into them. And our goal, of course, is to move their paperwork as quickly as possible so we can establish purchase orders for them, and then they receive payments. A couple of other items that are coming up. We still have the as well as the 2 grant programs that will be discussed today. There will be an FY23 Facilities and Buildings Relief Grant that will launch in a couple of weeks. And then we also have a capacity building grant, which we are still putting together, which should launch probably early to mid-December. In terms of programming, some of you may be aware that for the past 6 years, we have worked with a consultant on all things access and inclusion, where it relates to working with both artists and humanities practitioners, but also community members with disabilities. And so that consultant will come back this year to provide some workshops to various community groups that we have in our grants pool, but also to work with individual organizations. The last 3 or 4 years, she's worked with individual organizations to help them sort of map out a plan for themselves. And then this year, we'll have her work with staff as well, so we can better understand how to be inclusive and supportive of our colleagues at the office. And then one other piece, as I'm sure you're all aware of at this point, on Thursday of next week, we have an event called the Artists Table that's taking place at Woolly Mammoth Theatre. That's next Thursday, the 27th at 7 p.m. And so I pushed it out to a lot of our individual applicants and grantees, and there was a lot of really, really positive response to it. They really are appreciative of us elevating them and their work and their voices. Other than that, as I said, the rest of the report is there for you.
Commissioner, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to see as many commissioners as possible at this Artist Table event. It really is a signature spotlight event for us. It's the first time we've really given significant spotlight to the artists, which is really quite important. It will mean a lot to them for us to be there. So could you just reiterate again the date and the time and the place and I really, really, really hope we can get as many commissioners as possible there.
Yep, of course, Reggie. It's next Thursday, October 27th at Woolly Mammoth Theater, which is at 7th and D Street, D as in David, Northwest. And as I said, there's a lot of excitement around it, so it should be a fun, informative event.
What day is
What
that?
time is the event, David?
So there's a sort of a social hour meet and greet from 6 to 7, and then the program itself is scheduled to start at 7.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the date.
And next Thursday, October 27th.
Okay.
I can send details to everybody just to make sure.
Thank you.
Of course.
And once you get the details, how do you get in? That's the question.
So there is I'll send an email to you that has the link, and it's just a very simple sign up. So.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Back to you, Reggie.
Thanks. Thank you. That's it for your report?
Yes.
So thank you. Any questions, comments from anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, there's just one thing I wanted to add to the interim director's report, which is we now have launched the formal search for the new executive director. Since this is a public meeting, I just wanted to note that that position description for the new executive director of the commission is available on the CAH website. So for our viewing audience, I just wanted to flag that and make sure people are aware of that and know where to go to get the information on the CAH website. We are seeking a dynamic leader to lead this significant transformation underway at the agency and welcome all qualified applicants. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would say we really want any candidates that any of you all, staff and commissioners, can offer up for this position. Please do that. Don't make this the work of Maggie and the search committee. This is all of our work. All of us will inherit a person and want to be a part of the process. So if there's anyone you feel is a qualified person, please get that resume to Maggie and to her team so that we can really work our networks to get the very best person in that spot possible. Good, thank you. Thank you, Maggie. I'll add that since the roll call, Stacy and Hector have joined us, so thank you and welcome. Cornelius did say that she would not be able to attend, and Carla may be joining us later. With that, why don't we go to the finance update? Kymber?
Good evening. This is our first meeting in the FY23 fiscal year. So just when you look at your reports, you're going to have a report for the closing report for 22 and then the launching report for 23. We shared this a little bit in our last meeting, but as you noticed, we started the year of 2022 fiscal year with the $38 million budget, ended with 49, so almost a 20% increase, pretty significant increase over last year, which had a number of factors in it. So if you go down in your report, you'll see the budget that's been loaded in, which represents a $45 million budget, so still a pretty substantial increase to the overall budget when you think about where we started the year for 2022. And then just another highlight, like when we ended last year with an 85% of that budget going out the door in grants. So a pretty significant ability to have that increase really allocated out to our constituent base. So that's all I got. Just a quick one, but definitely take a look through it and we'll dig more into the 2023 budget as we get going.
Good. So let's pause here to make sure any of the commissioners or staff, if you put that back up again, please. If any commissioners or staff, and I know these charts are impossible to read, but just glance over the numbers, especially the bottom row, to get a sense of the amount of money that is flowing through across the various categories. So you know that this is tremendous work. And I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to make a comment on where we are, the volume of work, the accomplishments, any of that.
Good evening, Reggie. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Allende. I'm the Resource Allocation Officer. I'm appearing tonight in a blue shirt. The only thing that I would offer, Reg, is that I want to give kudos to the CAH grants team, and that not just the grants, but the public arts team for doing a yeoman's work on getting grantees across the finish line. This report, at the time that we did this report, had about $4 million. It's like $1.6 million outstanding in purchase orders, and they worked really hard to get the grantees across the finish line. So I just want to give kudos to them, as well as the team of two, and I do say two, Melissa Leonard and Kia King. Those are people on my team as well who worked extremely hard to get those purchase orders closed out or the invoices processed. We're still not done. So at this point, if there's still purchase orders that still have balances, please work hard to get the information as well as the invoices in as soon as possible. The only other thing I would offer is, again, as Kymber just stated, let's look at how we started last year versus the amount of increases that happened during the year. Some of it was one-time funding, but then again, some of it, there's a potential for it to increase again. Not saying at the rate of increase that we did, but it's a good possibility.
Good. We love living in good possibilities. Good. Anything else? So again, questions from any commissioners? Thank you, Kymber. Thank you, Brian. Why don't we go on to the grants committee? Gretchen?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much. My hat's off, as it always is, to the grants committee. They have done a yeoman's job. We are presenting our last grant for your approval so that we can end this fiscal year. Well, we've ended the fiscal year, but so we can end our last grant with giving out more money. This last grant is championed by Kevin. He's the grants manager for facilities and buildings. So listen carefully. I'll do the overview, and then Kevin will get into the spreadsheet. The grant, there we go. Okay, the grant program description for facilities and buildings is it supports qualified organizations that own or rent facilities, intend to own or rent facilities, or seek other permanent property or equipment designed for training, management, production, or presentation of performance or exhibitions of the arts and humanities. FY23 FAB applicants seeking funds over $100,000 are required to provide a one-to-one match for any award. Applicants incorporated this required funding structure to their applications. The allocated budget was $5 million. We recommended $4,911,300. 56 were awarded. 81% of the applicants who applied were actually awarded. That compares to FY22, 48 awards at $4 million. FY21, 28 awards at $2.8 million. And then in 32 awards for $3 million. So we've come a long ways. We've gotten more money and we're ready to give it all out. We had 5 panels for facilities and buildings. The FY23 applicants there were 11 more applicants than FY22. It was a 19% increase. For the second year in a row, the review required an additional panel. We had 5 panels. The average project size dropped for the third year in a row, indicating a trend towards smaller projects, smaller interested applicant organizations, or both. There were 69 total eligible applications. 22 of these were new to FAB. 5 were new to CAH, and there were 7 of the total amount that were actually ineligible. Of the 7 that were found ineligible, 4 applicants did not have the required leases for renovation or purchase projects. 2 applicants were not artists and humanities organizations or submitted projects that were not for arts and humanities. And 1 applicant was applying for development support, which is not part of the application requirement for this award. Are you down there? Okay. FAB updates. A question was added to the application. This is an update for the whole FAB program. The question was added to the application inquiring about whether applicants or their sites are registered on the National Registry of Historic Spaces on the DC Inventory of Historic Sites. This has come up quite a bit in many of the panels, so we really did have to address this, and thanks, Kevin, for making sure that we got this included. The question was modified, enabling preservation project applicants to detail how the project accomplishes preservation and conservation needs. Ranking, award justification, and panel notes. Yeah. 69 applicants were reviewed by 5 panels. Rankings were determined by the panelists according to the application content and the panelists scoring criteria as detailed in the FY23 FAB RFA. Panel 1, the recommendation is to fund 10 of the 14 applicants. The panel featured 5 applicants from wards 7 and 8, and all of those were recommended for funding. In panel 2, the recommendation was to fund 12 of the 14 applicants. This panel would include 6 first-time FAB recipients. Panel 3, the recommendation is to fund 13 of the 14 applicants. This panel featured several extremely tight variances. They were really tight. I couldn't believe that. Kevin and I noted that we really hadn't seen that often, thus resulting in a deeper funding ratio. Panel 4, the recommendation is to fund 11 of the 13 applicants, and panel 5, the recommendation is to fund 10 of the 14 applicants. Following the award announcement, the remaining funds in the FY23 FAB budget are intended for the FY23 FAB relief grant. It's based on the preceding FY22 and 21 cycles of that particular program. As you recall, we've done that the last 2 years. Allocation of funds. An applicant's raw score determined their percentile ranking within their review cohort. Award recommendations use their percentile ranking in a similar tiered structure as applied to the AHFP awards and according to the following. As you can see, the funding formulas. I think you can read those. Where someone who was in the percentile minimum of 100% received 100% of their application request, 90%, and it goes on down to 30%. Where funding breaks were close, panel feedback guided additional applicant inclusion at the lowest funding. Okay, Kevin, do you want to do the next slide?
Thanks so much, Commissioner Wharton. And once the slide is stationary, you should be able to, because some of this text and some of the numbers are admittedly small on this. So feel free to use your Zoom scale. It should be near the top of your Webex screen. So this is the, and I really appreciate collaborating with Commissioner Wharton on this. It's always a privilege working with you. And I deeply appreciate the overview of the recommendation thus far. This is some of the data that backs up those recommendations. And there's a lot of numbers on here. There's a lot of really interesting information. I think a really good way to go through it is to take a look at that rationale box, which is in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And we'll take a look at the top 2 paragraphs. So to reiterate what Commissioner Wharton said, the raw scores were used to determine percentile rankings, which could be applied across cohorts. This is similar to the tactics used across some other programs from the Commission. And the funding formula either naturally aligned with the panel's scoring variances or was made to be more inclusive. So if you look at the top left-hand corner, again, this is a reiteration of some of the information that was on that justification sheet that we just looked at. And as you see on the scale there, so that essentially what it says is that the top ranking applicant within each cohort, we are recommending that they receive 100% of their requested amount. As there were 5 panels, you will see that there were 5 awardees within that category. In the next category, the applicants within the 90th percentile, we would recommend that they receive 96% of their request. You'll see that these numbers drop by about 4 percentage points relative to budget. And because of a tie that was within the panels, there are 6 awardees within that category. And so forth on down. You'll see that, again, that percentage dropped to 91%, 87%, to be more inclusive to the remainder of the applicants within the cohort. Going back to the rationale, the 3rd paragraph says that award amounts were calculated to better enable project success, and thus the minimum amount distributed is 70% of the request. So if you'll look at that FAB funding formula one more time, you'll see that that bottom amount, that's 70%. Again, it's important to have these projects get off on the right foot. And so that is the funding floor that is being recommended for this coming year, and that's consistent with last year's funding formula as well. There is a lot of more interesting information as you scan across the page here. The second category, the two kind of bridge categories there are the FAB applicants and awards per ward. And so in the second, I guess in the central cluster of data, you'll see the breakdown of applicants. And this is broken down according to each of the 8 wards in the city. Starting from the bottom up, just to mix things up a little bit for us, you'll see that there were 6 applicants from Ward 8. There were 3 from Ward 7. There were 7 from Ward 6, 5 from Ward 5, and so on. Many of these wards saw an increase in the overall number of applicants, and that might be natural, bearing in mind that there is an overall increase in interest in applicants citywide for this respective program. If you scan over to the right side of your page, you'll see how many we are recommending for funding relative to the number of applicants within the pool. And so again, starting at the bottom of that list, of the 6 applicants that were applying from Ward 8, for instance, all 6 are being recommended for funding based on the panelist feedback. Of the 3 that applied from Ward 7, 2 are being recommended for funding. Of the 7 that applied from Ward 6, 6 of them are being recommended for funding, and so on as you move up the table on that. And then for some additional information, we also wanted to include overall award sizes per ward. That can be indicative of a variety of different information. The total applicant request was for $7.4 million, which was quite significant. And again, if you look at the right-hand side, you'll see that we're recommending awards totaling $4,711,300. That makes an average award of $87,000.
If I could interrupt you, I'm sorry, I can interrupt you just for a minute. I would observe, compared to last month's conclusion, that it looks like from the amount of funding relative to the request, we're in pretty good shape. The issue continues to be applicants ward by ward. And so there's a lot of work we still need to do to make sure that those lower percentage applicants in those wards is real. It is not based on equity issues or lack of access or any of that sort of stuff. But I also observed that even in some of the funding, some of the lower applicant wards, like Ward 5, had 8.73% of requests, but 13.5% of funding. Ward 7 had 3.65% of the requests, but 4.62% of the funding. Ward 8, 7.48% of the requests, but 13.58% of the funding. So it looks like we're trying our best to show that equity in the funding, but I think we need, and we have more improvement we can do that, I'm certain. We certainly need to make sure on the entry point that we are going out into the community and getting people to actually apply. So these numbers will shift as well. Just wanted to make that observation. Very similar to what we saw last month, but worth noting. But any other reactions to that? I'm putting the equity lens on. Any other reactions from the commissioners or staff on this?
I have a reaction. I've already talked about it in the idea committee. I think that the way the grants are given, we have metrics didn't have before, but I still believe that there is a long history on this commission of inequity, a long history. And I'm not saying it for myself. I'm saying it for the general perception of the people in the community, the creatives and other people who heard about how inequitable the situation was or experienced it, try it over and over and over again. When we finally get to the point where we are, where equity is a major value system for us, it does not work to say now we have equity and everybody who's been left out of this budget, the people who are encompassed by the $800,000 that was given to a whole section of town, and you had almost a $40 million budget, there is damage that took place. There are inequities, there are suppression and oppression that took place. And now that we said we have an equity lens, we expect them to compete when they've been held back so long, expect them to trust what we do. So I'm saying that when I look at the grants committee, which I'm on, and how they have, looked at, I think 5 or 6 people, I don't have it in front of me, who applied from Ward 8. Only a portion of them got accepted. We look using the same attitude that we've used across the board. I don't think that's right. And I think that we need to look in terms of what he's called reparations, or what I would call affirmative action. I think we need to look at how we deal with these communities been ignored and denied opportunities. And so when we start opening up, we have to say we have 5 organizations out of Ward 8, and only 3 of them get funded, or 8, 5 of them get funded. Look into these people's efforts and try to find a way to bring them in, even if you don't fund them fully or even near what they want. Get them into the process so they can at least have a win. They've gotten a grant. It may not be the grant they want, but then Terrell and people like him can help them build, and they can do better. But to keep denying people over and over again, that's not equity. And no matter what you say, Gretchen, or you're going to say about all the different criteria and all that, that right there is a problem. The problem is that even the scoring system, the point system. Natalie sent an analysis of that 2 years ago, and we have yet to implement it fully. I know some of the things we did, but not fully. But there's a mentality, an attitude that I think we need to really look at in terms of how to bring these people back up. And then my last point I want to make, and I'm a political science professor, and I also lived in the 60s, when we finally, after all the years of discrimination and racism and suppression and oppression that Black people felt in this country, when we finally passed the 64 civil rights legislation and 65 voting rights legislation, we couldn't say to people who have had years and years and years of inadequate education, secondhand books, teachers that weren't necessarily qualified to teach, all of those inequities. And then we open the door and say, now everybody's equal. But it doesn't work like that. And as a President Johnson said, you have to make up for the ills of the past. You can't just say everybody's equal, because everybody's not equal, coming in at a disadvantage. So I'm saying to this Arts Commission, especially to the Grants Commission, you need a policy, or we need to talk about a policy of reparations or affirmative action, so that we can make up for some of the ills that we have created in this unequal way of giving out money that we've done in the past. Now, some people might not like it, but I don't care. I know that there's a lot of people out here. We have a heavy, heavy concentration of creatives, probably more so just in terms of artists and art organization, not the big ones who got all the, not the big rich ones, not the arena stage and all of them, but we have a lot of art organizations out here that have totally eliminated any hope from getting anything from this elite organization called the Commission on Arts and Humanities. Or I am saying I'm not happy or satisfied with what we did, because we're using the same criteria for the most part and eliminating people who were encouraged to just try one more time, just to be sent away. And I just don't think that's the way to do it. I'm not saying if you
Cora, I'm going to stop you here, because your point is made, and as you know, I agree with you. We had this conversation at the Idea Committee, and I'll just repeat now what I said then. That it is clear that we have a ways to go to feel comfortable that we are being completely equitable in what we're doing. But I also want to recognize where we have made some progress, because I don't want to discourage those who are trying hard. And if you only take this one example, all 6 of the applicants in Ward 8 got awards. So it's not as though we're not doing anything, but I agree there's more we need to do. The Idea Committee is going to work with grants to suggest how we may actually reshape the criteria up front, look at demographics early on as opposed to after the fact, et cetera. So I think that there are different arguments around this, but I think we all should agree that we have not become the beacon on the hill with respect to equity and inclusion. And that is something we should aspire to do. But I want to make sure we're recognizing what progress we are making, because I do see progress we've made, so there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Reggie, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I thank you for this report and for all the work that's here. And, you know, as I mentioned before, my main concern is at the application level. Like I'm looking at this, you know, so Ward 2 has 24 applications. So, you know, as compared to, which is more than double what anybody else has. And so really what we're doing is this program is really building the quality of life in places that already exceed the quality of life. So, you know, I agree with what Cora said. And I guess my question for Kevin is, where do you see the sort of opportunity for growth, you know, for in the next round? Like, are there certain yeah, are there certain things on the horizon? Like, are there certain developments that are happening where this particular program that you have your eye out, you know, as far as cultivating more grant applications for other parts of the city that aren't where we're not so heavy in?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I appreciate it. You know, I think there's I'm talking off the cuff here, so I'll try to not get too dangerous in my remarks. Sometimes there's well, no, I won't say that part. You're right. It's good to look forward. It's good to look forward and to increase and find opportunities. I think that there have been some recent changes in this program that from when I have been able to engage with members of the community, there has been a high level of excitement for the opportunities that they see within the program, and not necessarily the full familiarity of what those changes have been. And so there's an opportunity for communication and messaging. For instance, something that actually came about with this program prior to my time was that it incorporated expansion, not just capital projects, which are, you know, hard costs for buildings, but capital purchases as well, depreciable equipment, which most arts and humanities organizations, I would gather, in the city probably incur. And then at the onset of the pandemic, there was a further expansion of the program to include projects for digital assets as well, which I think is also probably applicable to most arts and humanities organizations. And so there are entry points for this program, which could be of value to a lot of organizations that may not have potentially historically saw an opportunity. And I think there continues to be an opportunity to leverage that in future years.
Yeah, I agree, Kevin, and thank you for those comments. Facilities and buildings, unlike many grants that go to organizations for quote unquote artistic types of things, we have to kind of get in bed with, and we have, with DEMPED and with the other components of the government, because we are still trying to find a lot of artist live workspace. This is about hard, you know, bricks and mortar kinds of things. Kevin is absolutely right. We were able to add those things that are applicable to every organization, the technology pieces, all of that's included now. But if we really want to make some differences here, we've got to push that artist live workspace. And that's where you're going to see the big hits. And thankfully, John was at our last meeting, so he got to see a lot of it. Unfortunately, he didn't hear the fab piece, but he's heard about it enough. So we just really need to push that in all the wards, but especially in the wards that have not been as active. And the other thing we've got to do seriously, and we all know this, and we've done a lot. I don't want the grants people to think they haven't done. We've done a lot in a year. We've changed a lot of things on the applications. We've tweaked them. Sure, we have a lot more to do, but I really believe we've done quite a bit. And I want to thank you all for everything that you've done and the you know, the fortitude you've had for putting up with day after day after day of grants and questions and all those things. It's really appreciated. But I think long way to go, but we're getting there. We've done a lot in a year.
Good. I knew there would be a lot of energy around this, and I wanted to get it out there. So I think we have to continue to challenge each other. And, you know, I made the point up front, Natalie, that our biggest problem to me is people coming into the application pool. But we also need to have the right criteria when they go through it. So we have challenges on both ends. But this chart suggests we're in better shape on the who gets through and lousy shape on the who gets in to begin with. We will work all of that. That's my personal commitment to this commission that we will get through this and get to a point where we're more comfortable that we are really setting the standard for equity and inclusion in this space. Anything else on this? Are we ready to go to the vote? Gretchen?
I'd like to make a motion that the FAB.
Hector have something?
Well, no, well, what I was going to mention is that one of our greatest deficiencies is to enact a equitable as well as very large communication programs to reach individuals. And I know, Reggie, you're doing a great job with putting yourself out there, and I commend that sincerely. However, that happens to be one of our greatest challenges. A lot of people do not know, and you found that in your own meetings with the community, that they do not know about these programs. They do not know, and they appear to be foreboding and very, very challenging to be able to go into. And a lot of people don't know what exactly they could apply within these grants. They've got to get deep into the grant to understand it so that they could then imaginatively think about how they could apply, because the applications are many. It's just that level of unawareness by the community that makes it a little bit difficult for them to understand. And that's what our greatest challenge is going to be and continues to be.
And I saw it in a big way. I spoke last weekend at the DC Music Summit at Duke Ellington, and instead of giving a speech, I started with, how many people in this room have even heard of the Arts Commission? And actually about half, which is better than most rooms I've been in. But when you ask questions about, do you understand the application process? And, they didn't. Or have you applied before and didn't get it and had given up? Yes. So you're exactly right. And I'm hoping with the help of the PR firm and other things we're going to do, we're going to really, really get out there in the community, not just me speaking, but all of us out there in the community, making them aware of and changing their view of the hopelessness around ever getting money out of us. We have to change that view, but then we have to deliver on that as well. So
the challenge is not only there, but also linguistically. You have a lot of communities that are being not included by that they do not read. I mean, they don't have the level of comprehension of the English language that you have. These contracts and plus by the city should be also translated into Spanish, so other individuals in other languages as well. So that's the one way of significant inclusion.
Now, that's definitely an equity issue. Is there any way we can do our forms that way so it can be in Spanish or English?
We do some of that, don't we?
We don't have applications. We don't have applications in other languages.
Well, I'm just talking about.
We talked.
We have a large Spanish population here, Spanish-speaking population here.
We do, and
I know we talked about that. We talked about that back in the task force days of us having translators and translations and that sort of stuff. So again, I think as the IDEA committee gets more engaged, all of these things have to be addressed. All of them have to be addressed. But you're making a motion, Gretchen?
I make a motion that the commission vote to accept the FAB funding as has been presented.
I second it.
With that? Sorry?
Second.
Yeah, well, actually, it doesn't have to be second. But anyway, I go to the vote. And thank you, Carla has now joined us. Thank you, Carla, for being here. So if you agree, A, if not nay, Stacy? Cora?
Abstain.
Maggie?
A.
Juanise? Natalie?
Yay, I support.
Kymber? Kymber may have passed the lead. Mariah?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Gretchen?
Yes.
It passes. Thank you. Thank you. And as we've said many times, there's a lot more work we have to do to feel really, really good about where we are. But I think that we are on a path. We just need to keep ourselves honest and hold each other accountable for us pushing this through yet more. Anything else on grants? Gretchen?
No, I'm finished.
Thank you. Thank you to the grants team. Public art.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Arts has 2 reports this evening, one for the conservation grants. CAH is responsible for the maintenance and conservation of installed public artwork in the collection. The Public Arts Committee approved funding for up to $200K for projects, 2 of which require immediate attention. These works are proprietary to the artist and fall under the artist's intellectual property rights that protect the original intent of the artwork. Because they require specialized skill to solve their conservation and maintenance needs, CAH returned to the original artists for their consultation and recommendations for conservation. Based on the recommendations, those artists will be awarded grants to address the conservation needs of those artworks. Projects total approximately $181,000, and they include 2, the Gateway Wings on New York Avenue, which includes a partnership with DDOT as part of the New York Avenue Bridge Enhancement. And the second is the Chairs and Anacostia Neighborhood Library, 1800 Good Hope Road, Southeast, part of a National Playable Art Grant in partnership with the DC Office of Planning. Other smaller projects are envisioned and will be assessed during the course of the year. The second item for tonight is the FY23 Art Bank recommendations. An additional grant program for this year's public art includes the FY23 Art Bank recommendations. So those are our 2 items, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn it over now to Lauren and Sarah to present the report on these 2 items. Thank you. Lauren?
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Maggie. I'm just going to turn it right over to Sarah to let her talk about the Art Bank program. Tremendous amount of work that's gone into this, and I'm just going to let her explain the recommendations. So Sarah.
Thank you, Lauren. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. And I'm very happy to be presenting the FY23 Art Bank program grant recommendations. As you probably all know, this is the grant through which we acquire fine art from regional artists to grow the Art Bank collection. And once acquired, the works go out on loan in government agency buildings. We are very pleased to be recommending a higher budget number this year and more awards. And so you can see that the awards have increased significantly since last year. The recommended amount has increased from $228,000 to $391,000. We had a great number of applications, and so we had 3 panels this year. And if you want to keep scrolling down a bit, we had a total of 215 eligible applications. This means every application that came in was eligible. There were 210 from individual artists and 5 from organizations. And with each individual submitting up to 5 artworks and each organization submitting up to 10, our panelists reviewed a total of 935 artworks, which is a fabulous amount of art. Of those, the top scoring pieces, and this was 129, were selected to come into the building for a second round of in-person review. Many of these are on display in our galleries now until the end of the month. And so if you haven't already, please come out and take a look. These include works by 86 artists, 75 individuals, and 4 organizations. So of these works, the recommendation is to acquire 100 artworks, turned out to be a very clean number, by 75 artists. And this represents 70 individuals and 3 organizations. The total recommended request amount is $391,800. I believe there's a spreadsheet attached here. It's very long and basically just details all of the works that we're recommending for funding. We did also kind of a deep dive into some demographic information and have a lot to discuss around this grant moving forward. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. And Patrick, you might want to just put it back up on the first page. I don't know, unless you want to scroll through and look at that spreadsheet. Thank you.
My question, Sarah, is if we put our diversity and equity inclusion lens on, what can you comment on the dispersion of funding, the demographics of the awardees, any of that sort of insight would be helpful.
Yes, and I'm looking sideways here to my other screen where we have, I have my spreadsheets. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, as far as ward breakdown, and I will say that this grant does include Maryland and Virginia. So as far as ward breakdown, would you like percentages as far as what we're recommending?
I think just the
Yeah, I mean,
headlines,
whatever
Sarah.
gives us.
Yeah. For this grant, as opposed to what we just saw, which was Ward 2 heavy, this one is heavy on Ward 1 and Ward 5 and 6. We are recommending funding to artists from all 8 wards. And we also have a good number of applicants who we're recommending to fund from Maryland and Virginia. And I know that's been an ongoing discussion. Some of the good news I will report about kind of outreach and reaching new applicants is that 17 of the artists are first-time applicants. This is 23%. And 32 of the artists are new to the art bank. This is 46%. So almost half of the artists who we're recommending do not yet have work in the art bank, which I think is significant.
And Sarah, you may know this, but of those new people, any sense of the demographics there? Are they from certain wards, certain ethnicities, any of that insight?
We didn't break it down by new, we didn't break ethnicity down by who was new and who wasn't. We did break ethnicity down in general. So let's see, we do have, overall, we're looking at about 9% Hispanic Latinx, about 20%, 23% African American Black or African descent, 6% Asian, 4% Middle Eastern, North African, 57% white, 13, and I will say, you know, we have all this demographic data, but it also includes the number of people who did not answer these questions. And so for ethnicity, we have 13% who didn't respond. So these numbers are really interesting and give us a really good starting point, but of course are limited based on who responded to our demographic.
Can I ask you a question? It's good to have the percentages, but can you give me whole numbers, please?
Yes. So,
well, since the awardees were 100, the percentage is the same as a number, right?
The number of artworks is 100. The awardees are 70 individuals and 5 organizations.
Okay.
So of the 70, yeah. So of the no, it's a lot of numbers. So of the 70 individuals, 16 people identify as African American, Black, or African descent. 1 American Indian Alaskan Native, 4 Asian, 3 Middle Eastern North African, 40 white, and 9 who did not answer. So, and we discussed this the other day, kind of an interesting next step would be to look at the demographics of the district or of the region and say, how do our demographics of what we're awarding compare to those, with the idea that we would like to be awarding equitably based on, you know, who's living in the area. We're obviously not there at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to Cora's earlier point, I think this is the first time for the Art Bank in my time on the commission that we've done a deep dive on the demographics before we voted as a committee on it. And we actually postponed the meeting until that demographic information was made available. So I do agree that the data would suggest that there's more work to do, but it also would suggest that we are making progress.
But I think that the absolute numbers, even the percentages, still suggest a long way towards equity, a long way. So I think we just have to be yet more intentional and deliberate going forward in getting the applicants in, having criteria that understand the cultural differences, and I know that's there, so I'm not saying it isn't there, but we should make sure we get as comfortable as possible that all the people that justifiably should be in the art bank are in there and represent this city, if not this country.
Yeah,
Other
and I
questions or
would, and I
comments?
did mention this in our meeting, Mr. Chairman. You know, a significant number are from Virginia and Maryland, as Sarah mentioned, and, you know, it is a regional grant. What I would like to move forward with is to find a way to have mutual agreements with Virginia and Maryland so that, you know, there is funding for DC artists in those jurisdictions as we're funding, et cetera. So we're not against funding a broad group of artists. We just want to make sure there's mutuality by region.
Yeah, and I know there was quite a bit of discussion, and as I said, I could argue both sides. I think we need to have a more fulsome discussion to work through all the pros and cons, and the staff are going to bring us those pros and cons, and we'll have a more deliberative conversation, at least at the Public Arts Committee level, and ideally at the commission level as well. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Hector, you were going to say something?
Yeah, here's again a situation of inequity, because we have worked with some curators to put together some exhibitions, and I've gone to see some of them, and I was surprised to see that out of those artists that were represented, perhaps in the show that had a very heavy Latino influence in them, that none of them were able to participate in this art bank. And I've done this work with you as well, and I'm kind of surprised at the awardees not including any Latino artists per se. Not because I'm defending that Latino, but I find that very strange when there is a very large artistic Latino community in Washington, D.C. And are we really proactively looking at curators or people that we work with to go out and actually work with the community to bring them forth to apply and to present? I know that we had a very large number, and the 391 is a big improvement, but if it doesn't reflect the population of the District of Columbia per se, it's taxpayer dollars that are not necessarily going to people who live in the district or people who deserve these awards as well in the district.
Yes,
Amen.
Commissioner
Reaching out to them.
Torres, if I could just maybe make clarify the ethnicity well, these are how they're discussed on the demographic form. The ethnicities that I just listed are a separate question from ethnicity. And the first ethnicity question is Hispanic Latinx, not Hispanic Latinx. And we do have about 9% Hispanic or Latinx who responded. We have 30% who did not respond to that question. So that I just wanted to clarify that we do have grantees who do identify as Hispanic or Latinx.
Again, but within that community, as well as all the local communities, we're just not really doing as good a job in going after these artists to let them know that these grant opportunities are available. Are we using all our resources? Because to be perfectly honest, I try very much to put out information into certain community organizations, whatever I get, but I'm not sure of the mechanism that is being used in communications to get this information out to the right people, and perhaps even the right languages and in the right communities, so that you could actually attract them. You're doing a great job, and please don't misconstrue what I am saying. I'm only concerned about how we're getting out into the community, reach out to artists who have the potential of participating.
We know that
Opportunity.
we have a community outreach problem. We know that, and we
It's
need to
critical.
fix
But
it. We know that.
we have an outreach problem, but we're still giving out money.
Right.
Reaching the right people either. That's a.
We need to fix it. We need to fix it, and we need to put real actions in place to fix it.
Yes.
Anything else on this grant?
No, nothing further.
A resolution to vote, or do we vote on two together, or how do we do this?
I would put forward a resolution to vote on the two grant proposals that we've outlined here.
I'll go through the roster again. All in favor, aye. All opposed, no. Stacy?
Wait, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Reggie. It's Mariah. are they grant proposals or are they, it's through, for Art Bank, isn't that correct?
It's Art Bank, I'm sorry. I missed.
Funding proposals.
Oh, funding.
So
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, yes. So it's adding these artists to the Art Bank and these pieces to the Art Bank. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Tracy? Cora?
Abstain.
Maggie?
Yes.
Juanita? Natalie?
Yes.
Kymber? Mariah?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Hector?
Yes.
Gretchen?
Yes.
It passes with a majority of 6, with me not voting. Anything else from the Public Art Committee?
The other item that we discussed at the outset are the funding that we're pushing forward to do art restoration and conservation. I don't believe those need to be voted on, but Lauren, correct me.
No, the committee approved it, the budget, so we will work with those original artists based on their analysis and recommendations for conserving those projects.
So it's the chairs installation in Anacostia that require restoration and are disrepair, and there's lighting on the New York Avenue Bridge. Okay,
Yes.
I think that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Well, thank you to the Public Art Committee and to the staff. Any other questions? Cora, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that yesterday Maggie and I met with the grantee that received the grant, was awarded the grant to do the Marion Berry mural. And they're great people, and I'm excited about us moving forward. But one of the questions I just wanted to pose, I don't know if it's appropriate to pose it with the whole commission or if it doesn't matter. They're young people. They're, of course, in the same community that we talked about historically being, left out of the process for the most part. So there's a discussion that's going back and forth in terms of this is a big, big, big project, and it requires space. So I guess I could ask Lauren this and Maggie, but they made a point that they needed a space. So my question is this. When you, again, looking back in, reparations and all of that, when you look at these young people who are great, very talented, we awarded their contract to them. But if we look at them saying that we need like a minimum of 2,000 square foot of space, is that something that we can take the initiative and help find them space or supplement it? I mean, what is the problem having a huge project like this that the average small artist does not have the capability to host or to be a facility that would be available to complete or work on this project? What do we have a policy of what do we usually do in this case?
So Lauren, what they're asking for is 2,000 square foot of installation space to prepare the work before it's installed.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could have some conversations and figure out how we might be able to support that or help them find space.
Okay, but but what I'm also saying is thank you for that, Lauren. But I'm also saying without it creating an expense for them, an additional expense for them because they don't have the capacity to don't have the, they just don't have big spaces like the rich artists.
Yes. No, I hear what you're saying. I think we have to just look to see what we can do to be helpful.
So Cora, what I would propose is that I'll take that offline if you're comfortable, and we'll come back with some recommendations on both whether there's available funding and secondly, whether there's district-based facilities that could be used for this purpose. Is that good?
Cora, does that work for you?
I think we may have lost her.
Cora? Anyway, Well, good. Thank you. I appreciate our willingness to work with artists to be able to get the work done. So thank you for that. Is there any new business? If not, thank you all for your time. The next meeting of the commission will be Monday, November 21st, 2022. That's the next regular meeting, but there is an earlier November meeting that's a special meeting to talk about equity and inclusion, but you'll get a note. You've gotten a notice about that. The time is now 6:36. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.